Hi, this is Mariah Gullo from The Hollywood Reporter, and I'm in studio today with Eric Bana. Hi, Eric.
Morning, how are you?
How are you?
Very well, thanks.
You just flew in from Australia.
I did.
My question to you, first and foremost, is what is it like to be an actor who has stayed in Australia? Like you haven't made the jump over to Hollywood, and
Yeah.
I find that commendable.
Well, it's actually just very, very practical. You know, there's like massive gaps in between movies, and I figured at some point I may as well actually be sleeping in my own bed rather than, being on the other side of the world wishing I was at home. So
Yeah.
I did think about it. Like if I really had to do it, I would have done it, but it just never really became something that was imperative. So my wife and I just decided, why not just stay at home?
Yeah, and it's a beautiful country.
It is. It's not bad. Not a bad place to live.
Yeah. So let's talk about The Forgiven. This is a movie that was filmed a few years ago and is making its release now on March 9th. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me how you got involved in the project?
Yeah, I was sent the script by Roland, the director, and knew that it had emanated from a two-hander play, and didn't know a whole lot about South African history. I knew a little bit. You know, I remember the apartheid coming to an end and all that sort of stuff, but I wasn't really au fait with a whole lot of South African history. So the script was quite confronting for me, but I was mesmerised by the two main characters and just thought that dynamic and that interplay was one of the best things I'd ever read. Spoke to Roland, realised that he wanted me to play Blomfeld, and so I just threw my hat in straight away and then went about just trying to learn as much as I could about the history, because I felt like I had no chance of speaking Blomfeld's words without really understanding that the full extent of that history.
Yeah, I mean, this seems like a movie where you have to do a lot of preparation because you're in prison, so you've got to physically look the part. You have to speak Afrikaans, and then you also have to have this highly dialogue-heavy, play-based role opposite of Forrest Whitaker. How do you prepare for all that?
Well, excitement, obviously, because it is exactly the sort of thing as actors that we, beg to be able to do. And so then when it lands on your lap, you're sort of pinching yourself. And it was one of those films, that I felt like, oh my God, are we going to get this made? Are we going to get there? And luckily for me, Forrest was already attached and had been for quite some time, which really helped. So it was a little bit overwhelming at first, because it's probably one of the toughest characters I've ever played, to be honest, in terms of how do I put myself in the skin of this person convincingly, because to be able to speak those words, for the film to work, for Forrest's character, for Desmond Tutu, for that whole interplay to work properly, you have to believe every word that comes out of Blomfeld's mouth. And so that was a massive leap to take. And something I could only do by having a director like Roland as the safety net underneath. I mean, if this was, a young filmmaker looking to make a stamp and wasn't as thoughtful about the subject matter, I would have walked away for sure. But my safety net was the care that Roland had for the subject matter and the tone.
Yeah, and Roland directed The Killing Fields. And what do you think is like the major message of this movie, The Forgiven?
Well, I think there's so many. I think that the thing that's interesting is that you have two people that literally could not be further apart in an ideal or in an outlook on life, and they come together and through the course of these, quite confronting conversations, is it possible for Blomfeld to move even 1 degree? And it seems completely impossible, and I don't want to give anything away, but in this day and age where we see people hold their ground and not willing to give or take, I think it's an interesting time for those sort of predicaments. But I think the notion of forgiveness, the notion of what the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, how that was established and why, and this idea that people told their stories not only so someone could be prosecuted or so there could be retribution, but so that people could move forward with their lives and potentially be forgiven, potentially be pardoned, and in order for the whole country to heal.
The task, at hand is Archbishop Tutu is trying to bring the South African country together, and your character is kind of challenging him. You're at a place where you're a person who is trained to break people's spirits.
Yeah. And his dream, my character's dream, is civil war, and that's what he wanted during apartheid, and that's what he wants post-apartheid, and that's what he's trying to bring about, and he's trying to, I guess, infect Tutu's brain with the idea that what he's doing is fruitless, and that ultimately the white man will rise up and rule, and there will be another civil war.
And what did you learn that kind of most surprised you about South African history that you didn't know before?
Yeah, well, there was a lot. I mean, I guess just the broad strokes of the way in which things had moved over the years. I think the thing that's most fascinating is what's happened there post-apartheid, and the way that the country has able to move on from that period. Obviously, what they're going through now with we were shot in Cape Town in the prison, obviously, and the water shortage that's there now is just it's pretty scary.
Yeah,
actually.
Tell me about that. Tell me about shooting in Cape Town.
Well, we shot in Polesmoor Prison, which is a real maximum security prison in Cape Town. So in terms of production values, we could never have replicated what you see on screen for that budget had we have shot in studio. Most of the cast were ex-offenders that had been trained to act, so we used real people.
Wow.
There's only a handful of actors in the film, and so that was amazing to work so closely with them. The environment was extremely dangerous, obviously, because we were working in a working prison, so that helped for sure. It was good to go home at the end of each day, for sure.
I've been told before by other actors who have filmed in prison is that all your senses are hit the minute you walk into a prison, and it elicits fear and adrenaline in your body. Was that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I tried not to let the fear be a factor because my character was so alpha male. And,
that's true.
And there's so many scenes where I have to walk. Scenes where I have to walk into a cell. It's run by rival gangs and confront them. And these guys in real life, they're so good at picking up how someone else is feeling, and I knew that I had to just really tackle those scenes without holding back and without being fearful, and they were really fantastic at making me feel comfortable in that environment. So it was fine in the end.
Did they give you some props?
They give a lot of advice. They like to talk, and it's that delicate balancing act of listening to the advice, but also sort of protecting yourself and trying to remember what you were trying to do in the first place.
Yeah. How about your accent? Were they impressed by your accent?
They were. I'm sure they would have set me straight if there was anything wrong. No doubt about it.
Right. After this kind of experience, do you hope to move forward with another project that maybe is a little more lighthearted?
Well, I guess if you were jumping straight into another film, you'd probably seek something a bit lighter, but I had quite a bit of time off in between. So,
so you're going back to drama?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah. I try not to have any sort of hard and fast rules when it comes to what you do and what you follow up with or anything like that. So I'll just go straight back into prison if you need me to. It's fine.
Did this experience remind you of your kind of the role that put you on the map, Chopper?
I thought you were going to say the castle then for a second. A little bit. I mean, not really. I mean, I didn't see this,
movies.
even though my character is in prison the whole time. I never saw this really as a prison film, whereas Chopper really was more about someone who had dominated the prison system, especially the first half. So that felt more of a prison film, particularly half of the movie. Whereas this, I felt like I was a policeman who has been put away for atrocities, who's currently serving time in jail, and that. So it didn't really feel like a prison film so much for me, even though I was in there the whole time. But obviously there's throwbacks to that. But I'd say this was probably more challenging.
For anybody who maybe wants to get into Australian cinema, can you give some recommendations for somebody who wants to take that deep dive into what Australia has been doing?
Well, you'd have to go start in the sort of 70s, 80s, because we were very, very prolific back then, and I would go back to that period. Start with your Mad Max and your Gallipolis and Breaker Morants and work your way forwards from there. And then most recently, I think the one film that I'm most proud of as an Australian, even though I had nothing to do with it, would be Samson and Delilah. I think that's such a beautiful film that Warwick Thornton directed a few years ago that obviously won many, many awards. I'd definitely point people towards that film if they haven't seen it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Eric Bana, thank you so much for being here. The
Thank
movie
you.
is The Forgiven. It's out on March 9th, theatrical release, and then iTunes and VOD on March 16th.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.